Hello guys, welcome back to J-Word. J stands for Jesus is enough. Today's Bible story is about Jonathon's bravery. Then one day Jonathon, son of Saul, said to his armor-bearer, "Come on, let's go over to the Philistines' garrison that is opposite us." But he did not let his father know. Now Saul was sitting under a pomegranate tree in Migron on the outskirts of Gibeah. The army that was with him numbered about 600 men. Now Ahijah was carrying an ephod. He was the son of Ahitub, who was the brother of Achod, and son of Phinehas of Eli, the priest of the Lord in Shiloh. The army was unaware that Jonathon had left. Now there was a steep cliff on each side of the pass through which Jonathon intended to go to reach the Philistine garrison. One cliff was named Bohez, the other Sinai. The cliff to the north was closer to Michmash, the one to the south closer to Geba. Jonathon said to his armor-bearer, "Come on, let's go over the garrison of the uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will intervene for us. Nothing can prevent the Lord from delivering, whether by many or by a few." His armor-bearer said to him, "Do everything that is on your mind. Do as you are inclined. I am with you all the way." Jonathon replied, "All right. We'll all go over to see the men and fight them. If they say to us, 'Stay put until we approach you,' we will stay right there and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up against us,' we will go up, for in the case the Lord has given them into our hands, it will be a sign to us." When they made themselves known to the Philistines' garrison, the Philistines said, "Look, the Hebrews are coming out of the holes in which they had hid themselves." Then the men of the garrison said to Jonathon and his armor-bearer, "Come on up to us, so we can teach you a thing or two." Then Jonathon said to his armor-bearer, "Come up behind me, for the Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." Jonathon crawled out on his hands and feet, with his armor-bearer following behind him. Jonathon struck down the Philistines while his armor-bearer came along behind him and killed them. In this initial skirmish, Jonathon and his armor-bearer struck down about 20 men in an area that measured half an acre. Then fear overwhelmed those who were in the camp, those who were in the field, all the army of the garrison, and the raiding bands. They trembled, and the ground shook. This fear was caused by God. Saul's watchmen at Gibeah in the territory of Benjamin looked on as the crowd of soldiers seemed to melt away, first in one direction and then in another. So Saul said to the army that was with him, "Muster the troops and see who is no longer with us." When they mustered the troops, Jonathon and his armor-bearer were not there. So Saul said to Ahijah, "Bring near the ephod," for he was at that time wearing the ephod in front of the Israelites. While Saul spoke to the priests, the panic in the Philistines' camp was becoming greater and greater. So Saul said to the priests, "Withdraw your hand." Saul and the army assembled and marched into battle, where they found the Philistines in total panic, killing one another with their swords. The Hebrews who had earlier gone over to the Philistine side joined the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathon. When all the Israelites who had hidden themselves in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines had fled, they too pursued themselves in battle. So the Lord delivered Israel that day, and the battle shifted over to Beth-haven. Now the men of Israel were hard pressed that day, for Saul had made them army agreeing to this oath, Curse Cursed be the man who eats food before evening. I will get my vengeance on my enemies. So no one in the army ate anything. Now the whole army entered the forest, and there was honey on the ground. When the army entered the forest, they saw the honey flowing, but no one ate of it, for the army was afraid of the oath. But Jonathon had not heard about the oath his father had made the army take. He extended the end of his staff and was in his hand and dipped it in the honeycomb. When he ate it, his eyes gleamed. Then someone from the army informed him, "Your father put the army under a strict oath, saying, 'Cursed be the man who eats food today.' That is why the army is tired." Then Jonathon said, "My father has caused trouble for the land. See how my eyes gleamed when I tasted just a little of the honey. Certainly, if the army had eaten some of the enemy's provision they came across today, would not this slaughter of the Philistines have been even greater?" On that day the army struck down the Philistines from Michmash to Ajalon, and they became very tired. So the army rushed greedily on the plunder, confiscating sheep, cattle, and calves. They slaughtered them right on the ground, and the army ate them, blood and all. Now it was reported to Saul, "Look, the army is sinning against the Lord by eating even the blood." He said, "All of you have broken the covenant. Roll a large stone over here to me." Then Saul said, "Scatter out among the army and say to them, 'Each of you bring to me your ox and sheep, and slaughter them in the spot and eat. But don't sin against the Lord by eating the blood.'" So that night each one brought his ox and slaughtered it there. Then Saul built an altar for the Lord. It was the first time he had built an altar for the Lord. Saul said, "Let's go down after the Philistines at night. We will not root them until the break of day. We won't leave any of them alive." They replied, "Do whatever seems best to you." But the priest said, "Let's approach God here." So Saul asked God, "Should I go down after the Philistines? Will you deliver them into the hand of Israel?" But he did not answer him that day. Then Saul said, "All you leaders of the army, come here. Find out how this sin occurred today. For as surely as the Lord, the deliverer of Israel, lives, even if it turns out to be my own son Jonathon, he will certainly die." But no one from the army said anything. Then he said to all Israel, "You will be on one side, and I am on my son Jonathon will be on the other side." The army replied to Saul, "Do whatever you think is best." Then Saul said, "O Lord God of Israel, if this sin has been committed by me or by my son Jonathon, then, O Lord God of Israel, respond to Urim. But if the sin has been committed by your people Israel, respond with Thummim." Then Jonathon and Saul were indicated by lot, while the army was exonerated. Then Saul said, "Cast the lot between me and my son Jonathon." Jonathon was indicated by lot. So Saul said to Jonathon, "Tell me what you have done." Jonathon told him, "I used the end of the staff that was in my hand to taste a little honey. I must die." Saul said, "God will punish me severely if Jonathon doesn't die." But the army said to Saul, "Should Jonathon, who won this great victory in Israel, die? May it never be. As surely as the Lord lives, not a single hair on his head will fall to the ground. For it is with the help of God that he has acted today." So the army rescued Jonathon from death. Then Saul stopped chasing the Philistines, and the Philistines were back home. Thank you guys for listening. God bless.